If you have an Atlas stone that's a max effort 1RM for you, a medium sized one for reps and a small one for a warm up, and your upcoming comp is for reps halfway in between the medium and the big one, what would be your strategy for how often you would be working with the big stone versus the medium one? So what if instead for reps it was a medley with a top 2 stone? So let's take the scenario. So you're training for, say, Giants Live Stone Run, you've got 100 to 180, and you've got access to the 180, 140, 100. Like how would you prep for that? Like what would you... Like how would you work between the middle one and the heavy one? What would your strategy be?
I wouldn't do that much. Me myself, I wouldn't do much work at all with the heavier one. I'd be much more about getting volume in on the medium. Well, if it was a run, a medium, and a lighter one. I've never been a massive fan of doing super heavy stone loads that often. I think once you know how to grind through them, I think they take a lot out of you for not a massive amount of strength gain. I think it's better sticking to the moderate volume with the slightly light stone. At least if you're more experienced with it.
Cool. So. What about if you're doing it for reps? Or what if instead of for reps it was in a medley or a stone run where the top 2 stones are bigger than the big stone? So say for instance you've got that set, you've got the 100, 140, 180, but then you're finishing on a 200 at the comp. Like how would you?
Again, I wouldn't worry massively about the heavy stones. I'd be doing, say it was a 5 stone run, I'd be working on getting my sets of 5 stronger, and then drilling the heights. That's the main thing. So doing stone runs. To where we're mimicking the same heights, and I won't worry about the weight as much with that. I'd worry more about the actual technique you're going to use for that specific platform. Trusting that on the day when you're feeling stronger and you're peaked, that the strength will be there for the heavier stone. But I would first get every stone to each platform, probably, assuming you haven't done it before and you know you can do that. And then from there, work on being efficient to each one, and then start to put the runs together.
Cool. So give us an example scenario. Say for instance that we're 12 weeks out from a comp and it's 100 to 180. You've got the 100, 140, 180 to train with. Say we've got say we did 3 little blocks, 4 week, say non-specific, last 4 weeks competition peak, and then middle 4 weeks some like, what's an example thing that we could work on to peak for that fast 100 to 180 stone run with the tools that we've got?
I'd say in that case, you probably first few weeks would be working on reps at the 140. Ideally going to as high as it's going to be in comp or in that ballpark. Probably don't have to be as high if you're repping it, but somewhere in that region, and work on increasing your volume, whether it's triples, 4s, 5s, aiming to get a set of 5 at comp height for that particular weight of stone. Then in the next phase, I'd say I would be working on the area you're weakest on, so I'd be looking at lots of higher loads with the 100 kilo stone and getting that really efficient, and then maybe going on to like 100, 140 loads and moving in between them, hitting each one to comp height, and then the last few weeks probably more, if you had those 3 stones, working on 3 stone runs and trying to finish, trying to make that 180 strong at the end of the run, and so that you're feeling confident to load it on the day when it comes to a 5 stone run.
Brilliant. So accumulate volume in the first block, right? Just aim to get more work with the, say, even small to medium stone. Yeah. You could even keep the small stone in as like a
bit of a primer as well.
Yeah, fast warm up, skill development or whatever. Cool. So in terms of technique, so we've got what are your tips for transitioning from the chest to the shoulder on stone to shoulder? So for people who feel like the clean up to the chest is really easy, but feel the stone really slows when onto the chest and then struggles to transition to the shoulder.
There shouldn't really be a transition on stone to shoulder. If there's a transition, you're not going to load it. Well, no, you might load it, but you're going to just load it. If you get to stone to here, then it's really, and you can't get any further, it's really going to be a maximal kind of grind through. It's something I can manage. Most people would get too scared and probably drop it. Because they'd be terrified of passing it, especially when they start going lightheaded. It's hard to push through that. So really it's just working on being more explosive and getting your positions right from the load. So whether you're a low hipper like me or a high hipper, just being more explosive so you're going through that sticking point. If you, like I say, if you get into that point where there's a stop and a start, that's not going to be as efficient. You really need to work on getting the power all the way through. Even if it slows down, it has to keep moving. If the stone stops moving, you're pretty stuck.
So can you give us an example with the stone here?
170 kilo stone steel here. So do you want me to go to shoulder?
Yeah, just demonstrate the scenario where someone's run out of steam here, and just demonstrate that, like, we'll be able to see how difficult it is.
Yeah, so
you're getting there.
Here, and then you've got to move your arms.
You're just in a terrible, it's a terrible position.
And obviously even this, like, I'm all right, but I don't want to stay here too long. Imagine if this was 108 kilos, like I'd be struggling. So you have to really fight up there.
I think the key is if it's paused there or run out of steam, then the stone weighs exactly what it weighs.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's moving, even if it's slowly, but it's still moving with that momentum up, we want to encourage that momentum to keep going, don't we?
It's like if you fall off your bike, if you might be going 30 miles an hour, if you fall and slide, it won't hurt too much. If you just start on a bike and you just fell and slide, there's no get out of jail. All the impact's going straight into you and into the floor. So what you want to try and do.
So I think people like the question is pointing to the symptom here, which is the stone stopped on my chest. So how do I get better at pushing through that? Whereas actually addressing the root cause of not producing enough momentum or power in the position which is suited to produce more power.
Yeah, so it's two things. There's not being powerful enough to actually get the stone going through all the way, and also confidence and a bit of strategy in that people will lift the stone. They'll lift the stone and they'll take the hand off early, and then you get onto that position, your momentum's gone because you've got one bicep trying to shove up a stone to your shoulder.
Yeah.
Which is not a great position to be in. What you need to do and commit to, keep your arm moving all the way up. So you're here, all the way, hands off, it's at the shoulder. Yeah. So I don't actually have to move the stone vertically at any point with one arm, because obviously, as much as people don't do it, obviously when you think about it, that's going to be weak. So you want to go all the way up. If it's light, it's a bit different, because if it's got the momentum on, you can take one off. But if it's heavy, all the way up, right arm up, hand off, stabilise. So always just commit, keep going. Because if you keep pulling, even if it feels like you can't, if you stop anyway, you're pretty much done. So you just got to keep going as much as possible. Even if it's slow, that little bit of rolling momentum will be massive. If it comes to a dead stop, you're just going to struggle.
I think watching you do, like, say, the high extensions or high loads, like a brilliant example of somebody who's using the full extension. And you very often see people, again, a little bit like we said on the sandwich shoulder, like trying to get it from here to here too early, rather than actually achieve it. If you can get to this position, like almost like where you finish a log clean, where everybody who can push press a log pretty well technically is achieving like a good position in the rack where the weight's over mid-foot. Whereas on the demonstration before, that's brilliant. So on the demonstration before, when you tried to go too early, a big giveaway, if somebody rewinds this video, there was a massive gap and you could see the chin wasn't anywhere near in contact. Whereas Paul getting confident with his head back there, you can see that the middle of the stone is pretty much aligned with mid-foot. So there feels relatively comfortable, doesn't it?
Pretty good, to be fair, here.
Well, it feels so much more comfortable than being a few inches further down.
That's not very nice. But stay all day.
That's it. But the problem is, like, people are either people are too kind of a bit too scared to go to that position. That's what it is, and because of the familiarity thing.
There's one more tip to do on the stone, which again is very scary. So be cautious with it. But once you've got it, it's absolutely fine. But it'll scare you, it'll scare people watching you. So you'll be here, as you extend up, that angle's too steep. But if I go like that, every time that I go onto my toes, I'm making that angle more shallow. So it's an easier slope to roll up, almost vertical, almost horizontal. So it's so much easier. It's like hitting a deadlift. You're just ramping up your torso instead of ramping up your quads. And the weight will counterbalance you, so your knees going forward will counterbalance the stone. So you're not really going to go anywhere as long as you stay conscious, which is a consideration. But you'll feel that go and get more confident with it as it happens. But yeah, if you can push your knees forward, make that ramp shallower, push your knees forward again, make that ramp shallower, push your knees forward again, make that ramp shallower. So that is when you are grinding them out, the last heavy loads. You're not going to have loads left in the tank here, but you probably get one more rep out with that. It's almost like a car jack. You go up, pitch it a few times, and I'll get high. That's what I always use on my really heavy loads. I'll get to a certain point where I haven't got any more hip extension, but if I then make the movement a little bit easier, I can start to like jack the stone up and then get the load.
Because also what you're doing with putting the knees under it, you're bringing that close to your centre of mass, so you're making that weight feel a little bit lighter than it is, and any force that you're producing onto that stone with the upper body is going to be more effective at moving it, isn't it? Cool. So the final question on stones is what are the best assistance exercises, or some example assistance exercises for stones? And I'll cue you for a couple of scenarios if you just give what's on the top of your head.
For me, front squats are a big one because I load it more of a front squat style. Quite an upright torso, low hips, a lot of quads. Zercher squats are also a good one. Zercher squats are good for any type of load.
So I think Zercher squats are slightly more specific for lighter people. Usually, like say the technique that me and Matt had used versus what Paul had used. Paul would be Paul would be loaded up here, wouldn't he, like close to your sternum.
Yeah,
whereas
right on top of the
whereas
abs.
Matt and I would be more driving up from the hips. So it feels for us more like a Zercher, where it probably feels more like a front squat to you. So again, context in terms of the leg strength. What about people who want to get better at the pickup?
So for me, stiff leg deadlift, classic one. Any kind of heavy row, although to be fair, any row. I think heavy rows are a bit overrated, but pick up, if it is kind of actual hip extension, stiff leg deadlifts are perfect because you're in that exact same position. If it's terms of lat strength, an actual grip on the stone, any kind of forearm and grip work, actually getting stronger wrists to anchor the stone in, it makes you rely a little bit less on the tacky being perfect. And then any kind of rows where you strengthen the lats. And basically, for me, I want the stone to be into my torso. That's secure. If I can keep that secure, then I'm in a good spot. But if I can't quite pull the stone in and I've got a gap, then I'm trying to end up like this. It just uses so much more energy. So you really want that first pull to be get your torso onto the stone, then you can go into the hip extension.
Cool. What about people who struggling loading to height?
If it's a high platform, I would say more specific work on the stones. I think a lot of it's confidence once you get above kind of a chest height load. Going above there, obviously getting stronger hips and having more momentum out of the bottom will help. But I think a lot of that is confidence at this point and specific technique work. So get your stones, get them quite light, and load them to a high platform.
And if you haven't got a high platform, like actually practicing stone to shoulders, pretty handy.
Chest, or even if you've got a matted area, throw the stone, and just get some pop on it. Literally just a dynamic work with the stone. Harold Haugen, who going back 10 years was the best stone lifter in the world. It's absolutely incredible. And he did a lot of light work. Like took him from 90, 100, 110, 120 kilo stones, being super explosive with them. And then he did one motion 180s in runs. So having that general strength and the specific power on the implement ended up with a really, really strong stone lifter.
Brilliant.